What's up there, knife nuts? It is old Sluggy coming at you from Knife Tool Gadget. Hope everyone's doing well. This is the Black Snow Customs and Lerman Bowie production. Apologies for the spotty setup, but this is something I wanted to get out to the community as soon as possible. Any of you who are familiar with Black Snow Customs or Lerman for that matter know just how hard it is to get a custom knife from them. Nadia Moore of Black Snow Customs. These are two Israeli makers, by the way. I've been in communication with Nati from Black Snow for close to 8 years now, right when I got into the knife game, maybe 6 years. And I've been on his books, but you know, he is probably one of the absolute nicest, kindest humans that I've ever communicated with. That said, he has a book that is infinitely long, as his knives. They go for close to $12,000 on the secondary market generally. So needless to say, his knives are in very high demand, as are Lerman's. But I thought this piece was just too cool to pass up. Many of you may remember the Sandbar Sabotage. That was also a Black Snow Customs collaboration. This here is the newest, the Bowie. Last I checked, it was available at two places, Slice FK and JD Cutlery. I got mine from JD Cutlery, which is why it has that custom lanyard on it. I believe they are all sold out at Slice FK, but I know there are still a few available at JD Cutlery if you all are interested. This one was $375. There's a micarta scaled version for $475. But I want to point out a few really interesting things about this knife. So to knock out some of the basic specs, we've got a blade length of 3.5 inches. It's using RWL 34 steel. For any of you familiar with the Grimsmo Norseman, that'll ring a bell. Overall length is 8 inches. Bolsters, backspacer, pivot, pocket clip, all anodized titanium or blasted titanium in the case of this one. 4.6 ounces is the weight. OEM is Reate. And that information is not readily available. But when I saw that the OEM for this was Reate, I jumped on it because it's been a while since I've purchased a Reate knife. Wanted to see how their quality control has been holding up over the years, and it is every bit as good as it's ever been at the peak, at the pinnacle, up there with WE, neck and neck with WE for the best production companies in the world. One thing you'll also notice about this knife that's extraordinarily interesting is the fact that there's absolutely no branding. You don't see Reate on there. You don't see Black Snow, Lerman, anything. Just a knife. And that is a beautiful thing these days. Looks like we're using T6 hardware just from eyeballing it. And only 1, 2. On the lock side, it looks like pivot +1. And on the show side, pivot +2 there in terms of hardware. So very minimal hardware. Really, really nice lines on this knife. The ergonomics and design language flow beautifully, as would be expected. I mean, there's a reason that both of these knife makers are so sought after. So let's start out with a little size comparison here. Next to the Spyderco Paramilitary 2, the Para 3, the Mannix, and the Civivi Vision FG. So 3.5 blade inch is going to line up with the Paramilitary 2. The handle is a little bit more reminiscent of the length of a Para 3, but a bit more on the slender side. And by slender, what I'm referring to is just the profile as we're looking at them here. If I go this way, I didn't bring my calipers out, but let's take a look. It's actually a little bit thicker than the Para 3. Very close, but it's a little thicker. And as you can see, one of the very interesting features of this knife is the inset. I always forget the name, whether this is a sub frame lock or a internal liner lock, but it is designed in such a way that in the closed position, you don't see the lock bar at all. It's just a clean face. on the lock side as well as the show side. The action on this guy is absolutely buttery smooth. Access to the lock bar is very easy. So it's got enough room in here where I can just slide my hand over without any trouble. And once it gets past that detent ball, it just drops shut very smoothly. Friction coefficient on this knife is flawless, you know, and with the quality control of Reate, you're going to get that on every one of these. Lockup sits around the 25 or 30% mark, so standard medium lockup. Again, you have this nice room here for your thumb to slide in and access that lock bar. Push it over. Centering is perfect. Now we can only access this from a flipper tab, which has some jimping up here on the top, and it's angled in such a way that you can push button it. Doesn't fire out lightning fast, but we can push button or we can light switch it. The light switch probably being the preferred method. If there was a single gripe with this knife, it would just be, you know, it'd be nice to have a thumb stud or a front flipper or some other way to deploy it other than just the flipper tab. But again, remember, this is really a production version of a custom knife that's so absurdly sought after that you just can't get it. So I think it's fine that it's just got a flipper tab. Now, getting back to here, this is where, again, similar to the Sabotage from Spyderco, which was a takeoff on the Sabotage from Black Snow. And he also does a model called the Opiate. I'm not as familiar with Lerman. I just know that he's a phenomenal Israeli designer and that his customs are sought after very highly. I see more Black Snow in this than I do Lerman. I'm wondering if perhaps the Lerman part of it is more in the blade because the handle, or potentially in the slim down handle. I could see that as well. But this subframe, again, this subframe lock here is remarkably easy to access, and it is also adds to the aesthetic perfection of this knife. You can see the subframe lock down here, right here, and you can see it on this side as well, adding to the symmetry. That is intentional, obviously, and it looks beautiful. You can also see some of the silver coming up over top of the carbon fiber on both sides, and that pocket clip, the lines on it are just beautiful. All in all, just a remarkable piece, and probably the first piece that I've ever had actually that has no, well, I shouldn't say this, I know I've got customs that are like this, but first production knife that I've handled that has no branding whatsoever anywhere on the knife. No steel, no indication of steel, no indication of the OEM, Reate, no indication of the makers, and that is something that is quite special these days. You don't see that often. It's funny because the name on this seems to be one of two different things. It is either the Black Snow Customs Lerman Bowie production, or it is the Sandbar Sabotage. Either way you cut it, it's amazing. Black camo fat carbon on the scales and RWL 34 on the blade steel. Stonewashed, as you can see, a very nice stonewash. And it's saying, yeah, I see the difference. Yep, satin flats and stonewashed.